So this is your opportunity to leave if you're wanted, all right? Because part of my precinct is along East Colfax. If you've been a long time Denverite.
And he's not here today.
He's not here, so we don't have to worry. All right, you know, because back in the old days, and even now, it's if you were a vacationer, I don't think I'd want to be on East Colfax and write about Willow. So to give you a little bit of background information, Denver Bookbinding Company is 89 years old. I'm the third generation out of 5 for you business people. The chances of a business going into a 5th generation is less than 1%. Very, very unusual. I think that has happened because the business was passed through the females. So we didn't have the testosterone fights that happen in a male-owned business. So to go back, Denver Bookbinding Company was started in 1929. At the turn of the century, and we're talking the 1900s, Denver was a big draw for people who had tuberculosis. So right along East Colfax and about Primaria, if you go into the Mayfair area, you'll see screened-in porches. And that's because the thought was that Denver's clean air would help the lungers get better. There was a retraining center for the lungers over at JCRS. Now again, I don't know how many long-time Denver people there are here. JCRS is over by Casa Bonita. Does anybody know what JCRS stands for? The Jewish Consumptive Relief Society. And they were in competition, kind of, with National Jewish. So National Jewish Hospital would take in the people who had more money, and the JCRS would work with those people who had less money. So Mr. Bring was a man who started Denver Bookbinding Company. At the same time, in 1929, my grandfather, Axel Ursland, was becoming a master bookbinder in Denmark and apprenticed in the King's Court. He decided to come to the United States for a couple different reasons. So at the turn of the century, there were 90,000 bookworkers across the United States. And we're talking hardcover, so it's not, there's just different levels in bookbinding as there are in most industries. So there was more opportunity in the United States than there was in Europe for bookbinding and learning his trade and applying the practical application. And in addition to that, the family had picked out a wife for him, and he wasn't very terribly fond of her, and he said, well, I'll be back. So he came to the United States, and there were bookbinding companies in every state, from New York State to Washington State. Colorado at one time had 5. Right now, we're the only business that does what we do in a 9-state area. So bookbinding has gone through quite a few transitions, especially since 2007.
Where are you located?
We're off of 47th and Pecos now. For 51 years, we were off of 31st and Tejon. And again, if you're a long-time person, you'll know that it was the north side, and then it became low-high, unless there's a murder, and then it becomes the north side again. But very gang active.
I have a question. Was it ever located, the storefront, down on Stout Street?
No. I'll show a picture. We were down off of 23rd and Welton, right off of 5 Points. But no. Dieter Bookbinding was in the late 1800s, and they ended up closing, I want to say, in the 70s.
There was a bookbinding store down there around 22nd.
He wouldn't do the same.
Very elderly gentleman who was
No, there was an old guy that did stuff off of Alameda and Broadway. And he just retired at 96. But if you brought your Bible into him, he'd tell you it takes 3 years to do. Because he hand-washed the paper. It's like, really?
I know that's not a question, but out of high school, my first job was working for Bookbinding.
Was it? Yeah. Dieter got into a little bit of trouble after they were trying to produce a book, and they took money for it ahead of time and didn't ever produce it. So, and every time a family member died in Dieter, they took money out of the business. So, anyway, they ended up closing their doors. So, two of the more notable bookbinders that you may know, Al Capone, we know that he had a career change, and Michelle Obama worked in a library binding company when she was going through college. So I'm going to get one of my tools. How far does this go?
Great.
Find out how far this leash comes. I'm going to pass around one of my grandfather's tools. So his specialty was in gold foil stamping. The lighting in here is not terrific, but it's okay. If you'll notice on the end, there's a decorative design. So this tool would have been heated. It's got a collar on it so you can change out the different designs. You would take the leather piece. You would have to put sizing on where you wanted to do the gold foil stamping. Again, this would be warm, and then with the pressure of your body, you would roll on the design. So I'll pass around a book that shows a couple different designs.
So the design is on the edge.
Correct. It's on the edge. I'm going to set this down.
And Dennis brought a book he wanted you to look at.
And I'll
Right.
look at that after the meeting,
Okay.
if you don't mind. So this book that I'm going to be passing around the other way was published in the late 1600s. It does show the foil stamping on it. It also has marble papers in it. So everything is handmade. So who has a Kindle in here?
Has what?
A Kindle? You don't know?
One of those, yeah.
All right, kind of. You know somebody who has a Kindle. So if you ever read Amazon's annual report, they'll tell you how long a Kindle is supposed to last. So I'm going to tell you, it's supposed to last 3 years. Right. You're handling something that is 370 years old. So paper is not dead. Another book I'm going to pass around was published in 1661. So this is from King Charles II. And the original book would have had a lightweight cardboard at the front and a lightweight cardboard at the back. Then you would take it to your local bookbinder and tell them you wanted it print or bound in leather or linen, something like that. So this is all in English. What it tells you is that King Charles II is in power, because he had been exiled, if you know your British history at all. And he's telling the populace, I'm in power now, I'm going to marry me a great woman from Portugal, we're going to have lots of kids, and England's going to be strong. Well, King Charles II never had any legitimate children. He didn't do harm to the country. He was in power when the Great Fire came through, and he also was responsible for putting the gas lights in London. So what makes this fun to handle is that you don't need white gloves. It is all made from 100% cotton. So back in England, you would take your rags, so you take your outfit, and it's white, by the way, so that's a higher quality of rag, except for your shirt. Mush it all up, create a pulp, and make, well, darn it, that collar's been a little loose. Yeah. But they'd mush it up, put it on a screen, and then dry it out, and you would have paper. They did that until 1840. So we are, I think, I'll remind you that we're the only company that does this in a 9-state area. And 1840 is a big year because up until 1840, all paper was 100% cotton, which makes it acid-free. After 1840, they started to introduce wood pulp into the cotton, and wood pulp has sulfuric acid in it. So that's what makes paper brittle. You'll have brittle paper around the world wars because the cotton went towards the war effort. A lot of times you'll have poor quality paper in government printed low bid books. So,
U.S. currency.
no, that's cotton.
Yeah, there's still some, I think, wood in it. One of our club members was a printer, and he said some of the cheapest paper is what's currency.
Oh, wow. Well, it doesn't last as long, and
Is that why it devalues?
yeah. So, not all things can be bound, and I'm going to keep this one up here. This is 1668. So does anybody sell real estate? No? Anybody buy a house? All right. Again, I'm going to set this down. This is a real estate contract between a London embroiderer and a knight. And this is on vellum, which is a leather paper. It's all hand calligraphed. So if you nowadays we do things with an electronic signature.
Yes.
Well, that wasn't the case in 1668. This is a total contract. So you'll see that there's a cut pattern at the top. There's a second copy of the contract. So if you put them head to head, they would match to keep down fraud. You know, there's fraudsters in every year. So we made a clamshell box for this, and you'll see that there is a seal at the end. So most of you people of your age should have heard the cliche, it's full of red tape. And that comes from these kind of contracts. So with the leather, it was strong enough to hold ribbons or tax stamps, and they would put it into the leather. So Henry VIII, when he was asking his aristocracy about divorcing Catherine of Aragon, he put out a solicitation. It's like, well, I really want your opinion on this. And so that document has 18 rows of ribbon 5 feet long that showed that, yeah, I agree with you, Henry, because I would really like to keep my head. So again, this is a custom-made clamshell box. So things that are brittle, that's what we would suggest to make. So I'll show that. So that's a clamshell box.
The name clamshell comes from the shape and the way it's put together.
Yeah, because it meets. So we had somebody who wanted a clamshell box that was 15 by 10. They didn't like the price I was going to charge them though. On that small book that went around, they kind of had a star pattern on it. This is one of the dies that could have been used on that. though it's got a different picture on it. In the lower right corner, you know, St. Nicholas, we always think is really a good guy. This has got 4 saints on it. One of them, St. Nicholas, and he has children in a boiling pot.
Is that something that your grandfather would have collected or was it actually used in your business, or how do you?
We can use it in our business. It happens to be a woodcut from the 1400s, and this die plate was made in the 1600s. So I have a disease in that I like to buy stuff. And now I've had to limit my stuff to paper and books that I can read. So no more Latin stuff, no more Italian stuff. In the late 1800s, you would have carried around a thumb Bible, perhaps. This is a restoration. So the restoration, we kept the original front board, the original back board. We kept what was left of the spine and mounted it on a new spine. And we actually hand sewed this. So people think, oh, because it's small, it should be less expensive. No. Nay, nay. There are about 10, 12 minutes left. Keep me honest, all right? This is a banned book. So now people in the know, they don't want you to read it. And it's a little black Sambo. So if you remember, in the grocery store it was 29 cents. It's now worth about $75. So this is mine, because again, I like banned stuff. But the book is in here. So we constructed yet another method to keep the book so it's in good shape. So that book was misaligned because Little Black Sambo wasn't black, he was Indian. So people have a way to turn things. This is a McGuffey reader. This is very symbolic of a lot of things that we get with keeping the original front and back cover, keeping as much of the original spine as possible, but creating strength underneath. I'm going to walk around the book, and it may be hard to see. So this was published in 1856. It's pretty unremarkable. I mean, it's a poem book, and it has gilding, or the gold edges on the top, the bottom, and the front. But what makes it fun is that there is a forward-edged painting hidden on the foredge of the book. So if you can see it, it actually is a river with a stockade, has some people, there's a boat. This is also a really popular method of hiding and transporting pornography.
And what year
Do you
was
know what that is? Oh, all right.
What year was that?
No, no, he's called.
1856. Yeah, so if you ever start looking at books, 4-inch painting, and you see one that has porno on the front, pick it up for 10 or 20 bucks. Let me know and I'll buy it off from you for 30.
Another problem. She hesitated right there. 30.
See, this is going to be tough. Yeah, the lighting is bad. See?
Artwork. And pages. So tell us what happened in 2007.
Oh,
Or
all right,
something.
so in 2007, there was a paradigm shift, and libraries transitioned from paper to digital. So University of Colorado Health Sciences Center, for example, their binding budget used to be $40,000 a year, went down to $500 a year. So that happened with all the library binders across the United States, and within a short amount of time, the traditional workload went down 70%. So if you weren't strong in your market, or if you couldn't adjust quickly to your market, or if your rent was too high, you ended up closing your doors. And that's what happened. So we ended up buying from the bank a couple inventories. I'm going to show you this to you real quick since I'm standing here. But at the same time now, digital printing, the equipment's getting better. So if you wrote your bestseller, you would have to produce about 3,000 to make it pay. Now you can produce 50. But I just had a customer fly in from North Carolina because they're doing a 100-book run. Oh, damn. Yeah, and again, I'll stay after. Yeah. And that's why I don't pass this around, because it's a little more fragile.
Oh, right.
See it?
Right there, yeah.
So this book was 1856.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful.
How are we going to preserve all of our printing and stuff going forward? Because the mechanisms change and then you've lost how you can go back to gain them. I mean,
Well, now they're making acid-free paper. Even the stuff that you put into your computer, a 20-pound paper, is acid-free. So acid is what is kind of a cancer in a book. So Library of Congress did a huge de-acidification program in the late 70s, early 80s. And there was a de-acidification plant in Texas. And so Colorado State University wanted us to put one in until the plant in Texas blew up. So, and it would have been expensive, you know, it wouldn't have been right for our company.
Larry, I know Google is doing some of this. They're working in Dresden, Germany. There must be a very historic library there. They're digitalizing the entire library.
yeah, but then they change the mechanism. I mean,
Oh, I know,
from
but it'll be on the cloud for them. But the thing is, it's, the goal is to preserve. They're not destroying the original book, they're just making it electronic.
Well, and again, 1840 and older, we're fine. After that, and now again, acid-free paper is the norm. It wasn't the norm.
I think their bigger issue was the wars that destroyed historical documents. And here they're making an effort to preserve them somewhere else.
Right, and history just fluctuates so much. So we lost all the libraries at Alexandria, right? Because somebody burnt them up. And wouldn't that have been cool to have that now? British Library is doing the same thing. That a lot of their stuff is on the web. But what happens when the lights go out is my question. So, questions, again, I'll stay after. It's about 5 till. Yes?
I'm sorry, this isn't a question. When I worked at Peter Bookbinding, my job was to take, you know, maybe there were textbooks they wanted to do, and I hold it up in front of this big sander,
Yep.
and I grind off the back binding. You don't do anything like that anymore.
No, that's on a belt sander. And in fact,
Belt sander.
yeah, my mom, prior to that technology on a belt sander, she would have to take a wood file and file that off. In hand sewing, we do so much hand sewing now, where it's actually a needle and thread. And I have a piece of equipment that, of course, is old. And I do have computers too, by the way. So we go all the way from low tech up to computerized production steps. But it punches the holes in the paper so that you can put a needle through it. But they did come up with a sander, and it has blades that go like this, and you could put the head or the spine down of the book, and it would grind it off. Yeah, much more efficient.
What's your main source of income right now?
I want to say working with publishers, publication printers, for an example, they just delivered an order of 1,200 yesterday, but an awful lot of books that are 50 to 100. And it's a short run. You write your story, you want it told, you're a World War II vet, you know, this stuff that you've kept inside of you, but your time is going away, and you want your family to know, and it's stories that they could never tell, you know, without. So, so it's preserving memories.
I've got an old family violence. There's a letter written during the Civil War from one to another. It's just really nice parchment paper. The American flag on it and so forth. You make things to preserve pieces like that, or you just leave them alone? Or?
You know what, you need to bring it in and let us look at it, but Victorian Bibles a lot of times had the temperance promise in it. So you had to promise not to drink, and I know that wouldn't have swung with your group, but but we do a lot of those Victorian Bibles, probably 2 or 3 a week. So I do have some bookmarks I'm going to pass around. Feel free to take as many as there are. There's the ones that say take a vacation for your mind, and the other one says practice safe sex. So, thank you.